Welcome back to my studio practice. This is the third session on this particular hummingbird. So I have something that I want to share with you before we start painting. It's this lovely bit of research in this book. So let's have this here. This tells us about the tufted coquette hummingbird, which is the one that's taking our attention. So if I just read the main body of this, the male of this small coquette has a pointed orange crest and neck ruff of long black-tipped orange plumes here. His plumage is olive green overall, with a glittering green forehead and throat, a white rump band, and orange tail sides. The female lacks the crest and plumes and has an orange face and breast. A widely roaming trapliner, this bird flies in the typical floating, slow, bumblebee-like manner of its genus, and often sneaks into larger species' territories unnoticed, as well as visiting low-growing flowers too small to be worthwhile to larger hummingbirds. It nests in the dry season, building a small cup nest from fine plant material. Incubation takes 13 to 14 days, and fledging a further 20 days. This species is quite common in parts of its range and may make seasonal movements, including between the island of Trinidad and Venezuela. Now, all of that is really interesting, but the most interesting thing about this book is it's photographed the bird's life size. So this is the actual size of the bird. And if you compare it to the head of the painting, the bird in real life is actually smaller than the head of this painting that I'm trying to produce right now. That's quite stunning. So, and here was me complimenting myself on the fact that I was painting so small. I was painting small anyway in the hopes of being able to finish a work in one go. That hasn't happened. So what I'm doing now is I've mixed up a range of greens. My palette cam isn't working for some reason today. So I've mixed up a range of greens and we're going to focus on painting the green areas. Now I need to have a look because round about here on the bird there is a very vibrant green. And I'm going to paint them in and leave little gaps which have now flooded, and I'm going to have to lift it. But this little frontage here is going to be useful for extending the forehead of the bird. So what I'm doing right now is I'm lifting out the paint that's just been applied because it just went on too runny, too inky, that area. So I'm going to lift that out. But that's okay. That'll work. And I'll put in my darks later. So it's this area here is a mixture of really, really darks dark green. So from the description it said that it was a largely olive green bird, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm working with a kind of olive green, not an olive green that I've made from the usual mix of carbon black and yellow ochre, but a green mix of, well, it's basically olive straight out of the tube, really. So I'm now putting some of that olive, which is a very, very dark colour. It's underestimated how dark it really is. And created a nice dark area there. So that's my darkest green. That's my darkest green value. And now my middle green value is a mixture of, well, my dark middle mix is a mixture of the same viridian and cadmium yellow light. So in a short while, that's created a bit of oomph in that area. That's me got my darks. And now I'm going to wipe off the brush. This next mix is the lightest of my middle mixes. And it's cadmium yellow light to a greater proportion. Mixed in with the same viridian. So far I'm happy with all of that. I'm getting the right kind of sheen for the iridescence that I'm trying to emulate. Okay, and now I've got a really light mix of viridian, cadmium yellow light, and a lot of titanium white. So I just want to put in some sparkles. To lift that out a little bit. Having said that, I'm going to work those areas a little bit. Mixing them in fractionally. And that has managed to put in a little bit of glitters, but I'm going to go back into my lightest middle mix and put in again some more of those greens to help it glitter up. And now I'm fairly happy with that. This time, that was me working dark to light. This time I'm going to try and work light to dark for these little sparkles on the beard, which the description called a ruff. So what I'm going to do is shape them a little so they're more, if you can imagine a peacock feather, more kind of triangular. Okay, so now I think we need some nice yellow. titanium yellow light. I'll just allow that to run out. And back in with my middle mix, using the same brush, not fussing too much. Okay, now there are some lovely little scoops on these. So I want to be able to see some of each of the colours that are being added on as I go from light to dark. Switching to my other brush this time to get into my middle mix and create more paint as needed. Dark detail. Okay. And from something, well, from nothing really, we've gone to something. I want to put in a few little highlights there, which I can nudge back. But yes, that now looks as if it glitters. It's a much, much more glittery bird. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. And into my darkest value, which is this olive, which is really horrible to work with. For some reason, it's very, very claggy paint. Not enjoyable at all. Trying not to get into a routine with the mark making. By finding a formula and sticking to that formula. I'm trying to make each one unique and different. Put in some dark on there. And back in with the light. So now we've got some genuine areas of sparkle. There's a little bit of a balancing act, so where is my embossing tool? Sadly, some of that was lost, so back in again with my middle green mix. That's okay. Again, for the wing, working dark to light. This is a very purpley area anyway, so too runny. So I think what's happened with the olive green is that all my paints are very, very old. And I'm just going to keep painting until I've used them up and got the use of them. But I think that's part of the problem with them, is that they were too old. So they've lost a little bit of their oomph. So that's my darkest colour, my olive green. And now into my middle dark colour, which is viridian with a small amount of titanium yellow. Okay, now I'm ad-libbing a little bit here because my reference photo doesn't show this at all. It shows just quite a lot of diox purple. So that's okay. My light middle mix. Just in little quantities here and there. To give just a little bit of glitter and sparkle to the bird. This wing, this feather here has lost a little bit of its charm. So we need a little bit of that colouring there. Okay. And now some warmth with a fragment, a peck, for want of a better description, a peck of cadmium yellow. Working almost with a kind of dry brush effect. Again, trying to be fairly judicious in the use of that colour. Okay, that seems plausible. Now, the colour that has been lost is the Diox purple. And it needs to be reinstated. In a couple of positions, because largely the shape of this wing, oh, where did you see, is framed with a very dark colour, which to me it resembles Diox purple. But this isn't a photo of a bird, it's a response, it's art. So I'm quite happy to make things a little bit creative, have a bit of a creative use with them. Trying to add in a few little details into the foot in preparation for something else being done. Okay, now I need to have a look at my reference photo. Closer look. Okay. And I'll bring that back down. What I see are a couple of darks, but I'm not quite sure of the reason for their shape. So there's a rounded tip there, which goes out and comes back in. So just while I'm on the darks, I might as well put this in. And then there's equally another dark patch there, and I see a triangle of dark. Then I also see a lot more dark here, and pointing to this part of the feather. Two feathers sort of out of place there. Okay, so, but I'm not actually 100% sure what is that's going on in those areas. So purple's going to be a good foil for a lighter colour to be hinted at. Now, could you do me a favour and just close the door without speaking? Thanks, my fault. Okay, so what I'm going to do is try and do a little bit of dry brush work down here, because the bird has got this lovely light detailing. green. And against that grey, that works actually quite nicely, so quite like that. But also there's little flecks of dazzle. So I've made up another mix, another light mix. So I've got two dark mixes. Well, I've got one dark mix, two middle mixes, and two light mixes. And this next light mix is tending towards the blue a little bit more. So there's a little bit more cerulean in the mix. So what I want to do is put in some sparkles here and there. And I noticed when painting the Quetzal that blue stands out on the green. So a few little sparkles there, and some more here. How far does it come down? It actually comes down onto this puff leg here. And in little clusters. So I don't want to overdo it because the reason it pops as iridescence is because of the contrast between the very light against the muted colours, or indeed the very, very dark colours. Okay, so I'm becoming fairly content with this. The secret about enjoying your art is not actually to be too judgmental. Don't be judgmental about your own art, otherwise you'll talk yourself out of doing anything at all, and you don't want that. You want to have fun. So a very, very pale viridian, very, very small amounts of diox. Purple, plus the dirtiness of the mix, and a lot of titanium white is giving me another even lighter value for the feathers, and this is working out great. This is just perfect. Okay, so I'm drawing so much what I know about the feathers and how they're constructed. So I haven't been 100% happy with what I've created so far because I couldn't get the hair-like qualities of the feathers coming down. But this now seems to be working. So put in some longer strands down into this puff leg. And I'm trying to figure out where the lightest part of these longer hairs. Yeah, I say hairs because the feathers are hair-like in construction. So each feather is made up of individual hairs, individual strands. So I don't want to overdo it, but I do want to put in enough detail to reward the viewer. Okay, there's a bit which isn't working out quite so well for me, this part here. So And I'm stopping narrating because I need to concentrate. I want my dark areas in, but I don't want them to dominate quite as much as they have. I think a darker version of that value might be a good eye ring value. So if I just very carefully dot around about the eye, dotting my eyes appropriately enough. Putting in the pupil, the highlight on the eyeball. Mustn't overdo it. Revisit the areas where my highlights were. There's one there. There's one there. So just little imperfections on the bib. And that lighter value again on this area next to the puff leg at the underside near the vent. And to give it its texture, scraping away at the material. Okay, I'm actually quite happy with that, but I now realise that I need even smaller brushes than the ones that I have if I'm going to capture this detail, and certainly fit it into the size of the head that we saw in the book. It's just absolutely amazing that something can have so much energy and be so tiny. So there's some ribbing along here which I want to capture on there, and maybe not so much there. I hope to scrape through and reach a darker, duller material. And that's a technique that I use an awful lot. I find it very, very useful. Some highlights, and be very, very judicious in the use of highlights here. Back in, it's a very, very a very, very light mix of viridian and titanium white. When the camera stopped rolling, I might actually play about with this this detailing. But I can see that viridian and white were actually a very good choice for this bird. So, something else that I wanted to achieve wasn't that. That was a mistake. Can get into this yellow. That's too red. That's possibly a bit better. There is a light patch on the upper mandible. The orange is a bit lighter. And on the underside, if I tend towards alizarin crimson, which is much, much cooler. I don't want it as strong as that, so my mix, which is now containing even more stand oil. There. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to temper the strength of that through lifting out. So yes, I do want that material there, but I want it in much more controlled quantities. And having the dark lower and the light upper, illustrates the mandible a lot better. I keep using the phrase legibility, so it makes it a bit more legible. I want this one to nudge towards yellow a little bit more. And yes, I am slightly more happy with that. The branch, not so much. Perhaps this, yeah, that colour there. If we do the same thing again and kind of dry brush it in, I'll get colour in a broken manner. So there is a patch there that I see, and also towards the underside of the puff leg. Puff leg is a breed of a species of hummingbird. Let's knock it back a little bit. Can't have everything in extraordinary detail. Okay, so what else can I do while I'm here? Well, I'm in my oranges. I need to read up on stand oil, as I believe it to be a drying oil, and so I think that explains why my paint has been going off a little bit faster than I would like it to. Okay, let's try a touch, just a little touch. Yeah, perfect. Again, something akin to little highlights to make it, lift it off the page even more, make it even brighter. Create a greater range of colours within my field. That could even be separated. Into different individual strands. Just carefully using the embossing tool to give this look. I've done this before where I've used an embossing tool to actually, make marks. So just tap it into, a dark colour and see if I can just position tiny bits of dark within there. And now that I've done that, I want fractional pieces of highlight, just little tiny bits, sparkle. Not too many, just to make it leap off the page a little bit more. So, I can feel myself getting tired and losing concentration, so that is a sign for me to wind it up. Thank you so much for watching my studio practice. I hope you found something of interest. I hope you find something that can inspire your own creativity wherever you happen to be. Thanks for watching this one. See you in the next one.